Hello, everyone. Did you have a good afternoon yesterday and morning? Yes? Learning lots of new things? We had a great crowd here last night for Senator Harris. She was awesome. Thank you for that. We're glad to have you back with us today. In this plenary, we're going to be taking a closer look at family homelessness, celebrating the great progress, the achievements, the strategies that have resulted in more and more families moving out of homelessness and into stable housing. In a moment, you'll hear from our own D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, under whose leadership family homelessness has been rapidly decreasing here in the district, despite some pretty steep odds. And you'll also hear from a panel of experts who represent communities around the country. But I want to take a moment to zoom out to acknowledge the great work and impact that all of you have had in reducing family homelessness. Nationally, you have reduced the number of families that are homeless on a given night by 27% since 2010. And the number of families who are unsheltered has been reduced by 70% since 2010. What that means is that 21,000 fewer families are homeless every night and 12,000 fewer families are unsheltered every night. So that is quite an accomplishment. That's also 21,000 fewer children who are homeless every night and 7,000 fewer children who are unsheltered compared to 2013. So real progress. 43 states reported a decrease in homelessness among people in families since 2010. And in 10 states, the number of homeless people in families on a given night has dropped by more than half. 3/4 of continuums of care have seen homelessness among families decrease. So that is quite an accomplishment given all that we talked about yesterday in terms of incomes and rents not matching up and the challenges that people have to face. We're moving in the right direction. And none of this great work has been easy, and none of it has been done alone, but the result is that thousands of families are now able to thrive, living in stable housing that will allow them greater and greater opportunities and their children greater and greater opportunities. So thank you so much for that incredible work that you've been doing. For many years, the National Alliance to End Homelessness has held an annual award ceremony in the fall here in D.C. And this year, we decided instead to honor our deserving awardees during the conference. We feel that recognizing outstanding achievement in ending homelessness in front of all of you, those of you who share their mission and those of you who are their peers, carries special weight and honor. So today, we'd like to focus on the incredible progress made by the community of Washington, D.C. in drastically reducing family homelessness. And in honor of the awardees that we're going to meet in a moment, we invited Mayor Muriel Bowser to deliver the keynote address to us today. She is going to be introduced by my and our great friend Laura Zeilinger. Usually I don't like to introduce the people who are going to introduce because, but I'm going to make an exception in this case because so many of you know Laura as the former executive director of the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. I first met Laura before she went to the U.S. Interagency Council when I think it was the beginning of your work on homelessness under a previous mayor. And she at that time housed, I'm recalling, Laura, you can correct me, I think around 1,000 single adults, not so much the family focus then, off the streets and out of the shelters of D.C. and got people into permanent housing. We worked together with at that time and also when Laura was at USICH. And she has now returned to work in the city and has led an effort here to really totally revamp the homeless system in incredibly creative ways, using all of that knowledge that she gained from all of you when she was at the U.S. Interagency Council about what works best to revamp our system here in D.C., integrate it with mainstream services, and totally support families. So all I can say as a resident of the District of Columbia is that we're awfully lucky. We're lucky with our mayor, and we're also very lucky to have gotten Laura to stay here in D.C. and help us revise our homeless system. So without any more ado, let me welcome Laura Zeilinger.
I want to thank Nan and the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and it is so meaningful to be here with all of you. And I could not be more honored to share with you and introduce to you our mayor. For me, being here is a deeply personal experience, having worked alongside so many of you in a national movement to end homelessness. I know that you truly understand the critical nature that committed leadership plays in our work. We often call it political will, but political will does not even begin to describe the force, strategy, discipline, unrelenting commitment, and bravery that Mayor Bowser brings to our efforts. And please do clap for that, because it could not be more true. As a leader who approaches the work with the well-being of residents as her North Star, every year she's dedicated unprecedented resources to back our efforts and commitments, and she has not relented. She has taken time to understand the policies and strategies that underlie our efforts, and even when the pace of change feels like it's happening with the intensity of a pressure cooker on high heat, she has not backed off. This leader is fiercely compassionate, and she's a fighter. I could provide any number of illustrations, from community meetings where we've cited programs to meetings with city council members, but one example that says it best for me is this. When I came to DHS, the Department of Human Services in the district, reforming our family system was one of our first priorities, together with our Interagency Council on Homelessness, led by Kristy Greenwald. This required expanding access to shelter, where we built out prevention strategies and supports to help families exit homelessness more quickly. This meant, though, that our reliance on motel rooms for overflow shelter had to grow while the other reforms caught up. It was expensive and risky to have such huge increases in families in motels during our first year. At the peak of this increase, I was in a meeting with the mayor, and she looked at the data, raised her eyebrows, and looked at me and asked, "Are you sure this is going to work?" Rather than apply the brakes, which she very well could have, she maintained her belief in me and our plan. She allowed the time and continued investments, and it is because of that trust that the progress is happening. I am honored to work for and share with you an absolutely extraordinary woman and leader, Mayor of our nation's capital and the future 51st state, Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Well, good morning, everyone. I am delighted to be here. I want to thank Nan and the entire Alliance for honoring our team and the work that we have been honored to undertake for the last 3.5 years for the residents of Washington, D.C. I want to thank Laura Zeilinger and our amazing team at the Department of Human Services. Please give them a big round of applause. And Kristy Greenwald, who leads our Interagency Council on Homelessness. These men and women, as you know, do some of the toughest work in government. They meet people where they are. They call around to nonprofits and other government agencies and faith organizations to make sure that people have what they need. They share the values that we promote in our city, that everybody who's willing to work hard and try hard deserves to have a fair shot at a decent quality of life in our city. And many times they represent a person's only interaction with the government, their only interaction with our safety net, and they don't always appreciate that interaction. But we know that our human services agencies are doing the job that we need to get done. As Laura mentioned, we set out early in my tenure as mayor a bold vision to end homelessness. period, without equivocation, without a lot of caveats. We said that in a city as prosperous as ours, that we could end homelessness with political will and a lot of bold plans, but also persistence and consistency in how we funded those programs. We worked hand in hand with our stakeholders who knew the best practices and knew what it would take to get things done, and made sure that we put that plan in place and spent very little time wavering from it. We knew that we also had an uphill battle. D.C. is one of the hottest cities anywhere in the world. 900 people move here each and every month. And we know what that amount of demand does to the cost of everything, and especially housing. People like to say we're high demand or an expensive city. I just say we are an amenity-rich city. People want to live here for a reason. We have improving schools and neighborhoods, and we have wonderful libraries and parks and recreation centers, and we have fantastic opportunities. Now, it's our job, and the reason why I wanted to be mayor of my hometown is to make sure more and more people could participate in the incredible opportunities that we are building in this city. We also were very focused on how we could end homelessness in our city because of a little girl. Some of you know about her. Her name is Felicia, and we're looking for Felicia. She was a resident in one of our large family homeless shelters, a former hospital that's too big, too old, and not meant for families, not even in emergencies. So we really made it our focus to end homelessness and to make sure that the entire city would be part of our solution. So we set out to build small, dignified family homeless shelters in all 8 wards of Washington, D.C. And that has been a lesson for sure. And everybody wants to end homelessness until you want to put short-term family housing next to their house. I don't have to tell you how that story ends. But I will tell you, in this fall, we will deliver 3 short-term family homeless sites, and in the next 18 months, we will deliver all 8 for the residents of the District of Columbia. And because of efforts like that, that's one of the more visible things that we have worked on. But our interagency council ratified and approved a plan, our plan to end homelessness, and in the years that we laid out to do it. We put that plan in front of the council each and every year, along with unprecedented levels of funding. So while these goals can't be achieved overnight, with persistence in the plan, we can tick those numbers down each and every year. And so since 2016, our overall homelessness in Washington, D.C. is down 17%, and our family homelessness is down 40%, 40. And we continue to see this progress even as housing costs continue to rise. It is true that I set out to recruit the best team to come to D.C. We were thrilled when Laura joined our team, and we were very thrilled that she brought with her just really big ideas about how to do it. Some expensive and unpopular, but you try housing people in substandard housing and watching their kids not thrive in school. That's expensive, and it's not something that our values in our city will allow us to continue to do. Our plan focused in several areas. First, on prevention. It is amazing sometimes what an emergency payment of $1,000 can do to keep a family in housing and stop them from getting in the system. Since I became mayor, we have prevented 5,700 people from entering the homeless services system. The program that Laura talked about a little bit earlier, we are a right to shelter city during the hypothermia months. But what we know is families have emergencies even when it's warm outside. And so we changed our policy to allow for access to shelter, not just in the cold weather months, but all 12 months of the year. And that has been stunning because we did see a peak. But then we realized once our systems caught up with our policy that we could actually better help people all months of the year rather than having a surge during the cold weather months. We are also strengthening our partnerships with landlords. So in return for more supports and guarantees from us, the government, we've been able to get more landlords to relax their screening criteria so that more residents can have a second chance at housing. We also launched our Solid Foundations DC, which is a comprehensive data-driven strategy to end youth homelessness in our city. The right supports at the right time will prevent these young people from having a lifetime of looking for permanent shelter and give them a better opportunity to succeed at school and at work. And we are also finding tailor-made solutions for our residents. For example, most recently in the budget I sent to the council, we've invested in more permanent supportive housing for 50 women in our community who for many years have been reluctant to move out of shelter because of the community support networks that they built there. So with a new site, these 50 women can keep those critical supports and have the stability of permanent housing. And lastly, we are innovating and testing new ideas. Some of you heard Director Greenwald talk about a new program that we have called DC Flex, which will allow us, and we're testing it now in a pilot, to ensure that more families have stable housing without having to choose between work and paying rent, putting food on the table, and paying for other necessities. And so this flexible payment will allow us to incentivize people getting back to work and staying in stable housing. And today, I'm very proud to say that we're not only saying that we're a housing first city, we are truly a housing first city in Washington, D.C., and we're very proud of that. But having said all that, there's more work to do. In a city that's growing fast, as I already said, we're 700,000 people in Washington, D.C. We haven't been 700,000 people in Washington, D.C. since the early 70s, when I was born in Washington, D.C. Like many cities, we saw populations leave our city and now are coming back in full force. We're also proud of how we're running our city. Just last week, we became a AAA bonded city, and we are city, county, state. And so we compare very favorably with cities of our size, but also with states, which means we're running our city the right way. We're paying people on time. We're running our government operations. You know, the things that you like in a city, right? You come to work, you get paid. That's a good deal. And we're also working better with our contractors. We're attracting more people to work for us. And one thing that our Department of Human Services has been focused on and better able to do is attract more people who are doing great work with homeless families and getting them into permanent housing. And we will have more opportunities like that in our short-term family housing facilities, and we're very happy with that. But you know well, and we have educated members of our community about what it takes to really be able to live up to this goal. And that includes reforming the entire system. I already talked to you about what we're doing around prevention, what we're doing in emergency services for families. And Laura and Kristy and our budget team over at DHS were very persuasive this year, and we've also made a huge investment in our single system for moving singles out of the homeless population as well in the upcoming budget, and that's important. But at the end of all of that, we've prevented people from entering the system. We're dealing with people who have emergencies. Now, where are they going to go? There has to be affordable housing at the end of that line. So we have one very critical tool in our city. That's one tool in our toolbox called the Housing Production Trust Fund. In the last 3.5 years, we've been able to produce 5,000 units using that trust fund because we doubled the commitment of the District of Columbia. When I became mayor, we were spending about $50 million. Now we spend $100 million every year just on that program to close gaps. We've invested more in vouchers, in the local rent supplement, and many supports that will help people stay in their homes. We're also very committed to having people have opportunities to purchase. We know that most wealth in our city is built through home ownership, and we want people, no matter where they start, to have the ability at some point to make that investment in their lives and the lives of their children. I am proud of the work that we have been able to do. I am very proud that my team has literally gone into meetings and been punched on, not literally punched on, but, figuratively, they've taken a lot of punches so that we could do the right things. And I appreciate Laura's statement at saying that it's about compassion and empathy, but it's also about looking at data and looking at what works and being disciplined in how you implement these programs. And I think next year we'll have even better news to report. Thank you all for the work that you do.